You were not meant to still be in orbit. Before anything else, take a second and ground yourself. Tell me where you're listening from, what time it is, and be honest. Do you think you would survive being stranded in space if the country below you stopped answering? Because the oxygen readout in front of you is no longer generous. It's still technically acceptable. The kind of number that assumes someone, somewhere, is already solving the problem. The margin is thin. Too thin for delays. Too thin for silence. Your head already hurts. Not sharply, not dramatically. A low spreading pressure behind your eyes that refuses to settle. You blink harder than you need to, trying to clear it. Oxygen deprivation doesn't announce itself with alarms. It shows up as irritation. Fog, the sense that thinking is taking more effort than it should. You tell yourself it's stress. That's the first lie. You call down again. Nothing. You wait the required interval. Call again. Switch channels. Try the backup frequency that exists specifically for situations that are not supposed to happen. Still nothing. This is no longer a delay. This is what being forgotten feels like. Your breathing becomes deliberate without you deciding it should. Counted, managed. You can feel the air hunger before any alarm agrees with you. Not panic. Something worse. Awareness. Your body has noticed before the instruments have. When the signal finally comes through, it doesn't arrive cleanly. The audio cuts in and out, clipped and strained, like the words are being rationed. The voice sounds careful, not afraid, controlled. The kind of control that suggests someone else is listening. They tell you your levels are within acceptable range. That sentence does a lot of work very quickly, because acceptable is not the same as safe, and it doesn't explain why your head hurts or why your breathing feels wrong. They tell you to conserve oxygen. Conserving oxygen assumes time is still on your side. You ask when the recovery craft is launching. They don't answer that. Another transmission follows, or maybe it came first. Time has started behaving strangely, stretching in places it shouldn't, collapsing where you need it most. This voice is different. The cadence is off. The phrasing has changed. You ask the same question again. You receive instructions that technically answer nothing. You notice the terminology shift. Small at first, subtle enough to dismiss, then undeniable. You float closer to the window. The Earth is there. Whole, bright, offensively calm. Continents slide beneath you like nothing has ever gone wrong. From orbit, collapse leaves no smoke. No borders either, which feels relevant now. One transmission references a Soviet recovery schedule. The next one corrects it, awkwardly, and uses different language, different authority, different assumptions. You ask a question you were never trained to ask. Who exactly am I speaking to? The pause on the other end lasts too long. You weren't trained for this part. You were trained for fire, pressure loss, orbital decay. You were not trained for your country disappearing while you're still wearing its name on your suit. The word USSR stops appearing. No one explains why. They don't have to. You check the fuel readout next. You wish you hadn't. The thruster fuel is low. Not catastrophic, just insufficient for hesitation. Just enough to remind you that re-entry is not automatic. It's a controlled fall that requires permission from physics. Without fuel, you don't come down. You drift. Forever, if the math is honest. This is the part they don't include in training simulations. The part where you realize you have 2 clocks now, and neither one cares about your feelings. Oxygen determines how long you stay conscious. Fuel determines whether you ever come home. You don't have enough of either to wait out a debate. You try to steady your breathing. It doesn't respond the way it should. Each inhale feels slightly inadequate, like the air is thinner than the numbers claim. You slow it down manually, counting seconds you shouldn't have to count. The headache pulses harder when you focus too long on anything precise. Your body is working around the problem. That usually means the problem is real. Ground control comes back online. Two voices overlap. One corrects the other mid-sentence. Instructions arrive in fragments that technically make sense, but don't line up when placed next to each other. You reread the checklist, then reread it again, annoyed that it isn't sticking. The delay costs you a small correction window. You compensate. Fuel drops faster than expected. They tell you this is normal, that your vitals are fine, that levels remain within acceptable limits. You believe them for a moment, long enough to ignore the tightness in your chest and the slight tremor in your hands. The reassurance works better than it should. That's the dangerous part. Your fingers feel clumsy. You notice, because you miss a switch you flipped hundreds of times. It's not dramatic, just off by a centimeter. The kind of mistake that doesn't matter until it does. Microgravity turns small errors into floating reminders. You retrieve the tools slower than usual. Your reaction time is degrading. An orbital adjustment is suggested. Suggested, not commanded. Normally, this would be routine. Teams on the ground would calculate margins you never have to see. Today, they tell you to use your judgment. Your judgment is currently running on low oxygen and worse information. You make the maneuver. It works. Mostly. Fuel drops again. The headache sharpens. Your thoughts begin to loop. You catch yourself checking the same readout twice, then a third time, unsure whether you've already corrected for it. Oxygen deprivation isn't dramatic. It's embarrassing. You're aware you're getting worse in real time. You slow everything down. That costs more fuel. A warning indicator flickers. Not an alarm. Not urgent. Just incorrect. Your orbital path is brushing closer to a debris corridor than planned. Nothing catastrophic. Just closer than anyone would normally allow. No one mentioned it because no one was watching closely enough to notice in time. You maneuver manually. You miss one fragment by meters, another by less. Your capsule shudders, not from impact, from proximity. A reminder that space is full of things left behind by systems that collapsed quietly. Satellites, panels, forgotten infrastructure moving faster than bullets. You don't report it. There's no bandwidth for explanations anymore. Your mouth tastes metallic. You swallow and feel your throat tighten. Breathing feels shallow enough now that you have to consciously override it. Your heart rate stays elevated longer than it should. Sleep becomes fragmented. Short, disorienting stretches that leave you unsure how long you are unconscious. Your body is conserving resources without asking you. Another transmission comes through. They mention increased solar activity in passing. A flare. Elevated radiation levels. Nothing immediate. Just something to be aware of. Awareness doesn't protect you from radiation. It just lets you imagine it. You check the fuel again. Then the oxygen. Neither number has crossed a red line. Both are close enough to make the math unforgiving. The real problem isn't that you're running out of air. It's that every mistake you make burns the thing you need to come home. You understand something then, cold and unavoidable. Even if someone below you figures out who's in charge, even if the political confusion resolves itself, the physics above you won't wait. You are alive. You are functional. And you are one more hesitation away from turning survival into drift. You stop trusting your own calculations. Not because the numbers are wrong, but because you are. The headache has settled into something heavier now, a dull pressure that makes certainty feel slippery. You recheck a maneuver you already corrected, then correct it again just to be sure. That second correction burns fuel you didn't plan to lose. Ground control comes back briefly. 3 voices, different priorities. One tells you to hold orbit. Another mentions contingency prep. A third starts a sentence and never finishes it. No one clarifies who has final authority. You realize there isn't one. There's just permission without responsibility. Your hands shake when you try to fine-tune the controls. Not violently, subtly, enough to make precision unreliable. You flex your fingers, annoyed, as if irritation might fix physiology. The capsule doesn't care how you feel about it. Precision is degrading, and precision is everything now. You're informed that re-entry is possible. Not scheduled, not approved. Possible. There will be no abort window, no correction loop. Fuel reserves won't support a second pass. If the math is off, you don't try again. You fall once. Make it clean or don't come back. You look at the fuel again. You already know the number, but you check it anyway. Stress has started turning verification into ritual. Every adjustment you make tightens the margin. Every delay makes the physics less forgiving. You can feel your breathing speed up. You force it slower. That costs oxygen. Another debris advisory comes through late. Too late to reroute cleanly. You thread a path through objects that should have been tracked days ago. No one apologizes. No one explains. The maneuver is yours to execute and yours to own. You clear it. Barely. Fuel drops again. Your vision narrows when you move too quickly. A brief grayness at the edges that fades if you stay still. You don't mention it. You don't log it. You already know what it means. Oxygen deprivation isn't dramatic. It's inconvenient, right up until it is. Communications degrade further. Static replaces sentences. You hear confirmation tones without content. Instructions arrive stripped of context, like the meaning fell out somewhere between ground and orbit. Then the line goes dead. Not interference. Gone. You are alone with the math now. You initiate re-entry prep anyway. Waiting doesn't improve the numbers. Waiting just lets the clocks keep running. You arm systems that respond instantly, efficiently, without confusion. The machinery has no opinion about what's happening below you. It still works. That almost makes this worse. The first resistance hits harder than you expect. The capsule shudders as the atmosphere grabs you. G-forces slam you into the seat. Your vision tunnels, pressure crushing thought into instinct. You taste blood where you bit your tongue. This is not controlled. This is tolerated. Your breathing goes shallow again. You can't tell if it's fear, oxygen loss, or both. The distinction stops mattering when your body is just trying to stay conscious long enough for physics to finish its job. You black out. Not completely, just long enough to miss something important. When awareness returns, the shaking has changed. Slower, heavier. Gravity is asserting itself, indifferent and absolute. Your muscles protest in ways they didn't in orbit. Pain arrives late, like it had to catch up. You laugh once quietly. At least gravity still exists. You hit the ground hard. Not catastrophically, not gently. Hard enough to remind you that survival is not the same as success. The capsule settles. Silence follows. The hatch opens slower than you expect. Not ceremonially, not with relief, just hands reaching in that don't match the ones you train to recognize. Different uniforms, different insignia. No one announces your name. No one explains what comes next. You are extracted like equipment that finally landed where it was supposed to. That's the first thing that's wrong. They put you on a stretcher even though you can still stand. Protocol, they say, but the protocol feels improvised. Questions are redirected instead of answered. You ask where you are, and they give you a region instead of a country. That matters more than they want it to. Your body doesn't recover the way it should. Gravity hurts in places that shouldn't hurt. Your legs shake when you try to sit up. Your chest feels tight, like your lungs forgot how much air they're allowed to take. Oxygen deprivation doesn't end when the capsule opens. It follows you down. You start noticing the details. The language is familiar, but stripped down, simplified. Words are chosen carefully, like everyone is afraid of using the wrong ones. The uniforms don't match the ones in your memory. The symbols are close, but not the same. You correct someone automatically. They don't correct you back. They just move on. Someone finally explains what happened. Not directly, not cleanly. They talk about restructuring, transition, temporary authority. They say the program was dissolved, the agency reorganized, the state redefined. They avoid naming the thing that ended. They never say USSR. They don't say your country at all. You realize you're being documented again. New forms, new classifications, new questions that don't have room for your answers. Your service record belongs to a system that no longer exists. Your credentials don't map cleanly onto whatever replaced it. That's when it hits you. You're not a returning astronaut. You're an administrative problem. No one knows where to put you. No one knows who owes you anything. You're too valuable to discard and too inconvenient to celebrate. So they stall. They file. They delay decisions that require ownership. In systems like this, delay isn't neutral. It's permanent. You survived launch. You survived orbit. You survived debris, radiation, oxygen loss, fuel loss, re-entry. You did everything right, and none of it mattered, because survival only works when there's something stable to survive into. There is no parade, no recognition that fits the current narrative. History moves forward without adjusting for you. Your story is condensed, neutralized, filed under a transition period people would rather not remember clearly. You didn't miss home. Home moved on without you. A mission doesn't fail when the astronaut dies. It fails when the system that sent them up no longer exists to receive them. You weren't stranded in space. You were stranded in time. Before you leave, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. And be honest. Do you think you would survive being stranded in space if the air you were breathing and the country you belong to both stopped recognizing you? Because the most dangerous part of a collapse isn't being trapped above the earth. It's coming back and realizing there's nothing left that knows what to do with you.